Welcome to the Sisters Uncensored podcast, where we get into everything from childhood trauma to millennial adulting and all things in between.
We share crazy stories from the past and present to help us cope with the insanity that is our lives.
By sharing our perspectives, we hope to bring some relatability, laughter, and unsolicited advice that can help you survive the messiness of life along with us.
My name's Jessica Labita. I'm a millennial mom, wife, and marketing professional, and I am absolutely insane.
My name is Ashley Lanive. I am a millennial stay-at-home mom, avid golfer, and too mouthy for my own good.
We are real sisters, and this is Sisters Uncensored. Take this trip with us.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sisters Uncensored podcast. Today we have a really awesome guest. It's Coach Randy White. Coach Randy, he coaches victims of narcissistic and toxic abuse. He teaches people how to survive and thrive, and we are so excited you are here. How are you, Randy?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited about this. This is fun.
Definitely.
I love you guys' set. The blur the colors are just beautiful.
Thank you.
You got the blue, you got the purple.
Yeah, we have a great producer. So tell us, what's your story? How did you become a coach for this type of abuse? Tell us your background.
Yeah, so, basically for myself, I grew up in toxic and narcissistic family systems, right? So, and I suffered mostly, emotional abuse, and it would be like emotional neglect and emotional abandonment. So I kind of just grew up on my own, happened to overcome a lot of those things by myself with no guidance. And I always knew that I was going to end up helping people. But at an early age of 12, I also learned the philosophy of the law of manifestation. It wasn't quite called The Secret back then. It was before, they coined The Secret. But so I also grew up with just kind of a really deep, sick belief in myself and for everybody that we can create our own realities if we just build the vision and do the work, right? So a lot of my life has been just creating my life over and over and over. And then fast forward to 2019, I was getting out of this toxic relationship where I first noticed this cycle of like idolization, love bombing, devaluation, discard, and hoover. And I was like, wait a minute, what the heck? And so during that healing journey, I also saw the rise of influencers and all these coaches using social media to, kind of get their message out there and help others. And I was like, I can do that. And so I just built this vision, and then a year after kind of building the vision and everything, I met a narcissist. And then, I went through that experience, and 2.5 years after the experience, after, the mask had fallen off and the light came on and my eyes were open, I was just like, wow. And so to start my recovery journey, I had to kind of go back and say, well, what did I want before I met this person? What was I doing? And then I was like, well, I was doing that, so I might as well, get back on the wagon and move forward. And then I started making videos. A couple weeks later, I went viral.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay. What would you say are some key signs that someone should look out for a narcissistic partner? Like if you're in a relationship early, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, what are the red flags?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the main red flags for stuff that's going to be number one, if their words don't align with their actions, right? If that's happening, there's a clear sign that something's off. And, things are just not able to take accountability, grandiose, sense of entitlement to where it's just all about them. You don't really feel any empathy. There's no lack of empathy. And you see kind of there's gaslighting and lying. These are all signs of narcissistic abuse, right? Now, as far as classifying it, are they narcissism? I don't know. They'd have to go get diagnosed, right? But if these traits, behaviors, and patterns are happening in a kind of a cycle, then you're dealing with narcissistic abuse, right? So those are kind of the things that we'd want to look for.
I agree with that. I wonder if it's more of a slow-moving process where it's harder to identify a narcissist when you're in a relationship with one, because I don't know necessarily if all of those things happen very quickly or at once, or if it's a slow drip. If that makes sense. No,
it's going to be a slow drip. I mean, out the gate, it's really, really hard. Obviously, it's going to be the love bombing. If they're forcing the relationship really quick, they're coming on too strong, they're consuming all of your time. This is the idolization phase. This is where they're trying to get their hooks in, right? That soulmate energy, the twin flame energy, and all of these things, right? But essentially, okay, that's fine. Pay attention to that. that's where you want to start kind of looking for the red flags, starting to say, okay, now is their actions aligning with their words, right? Not jumping into anything, but allowing things to play out. Never want to give trust right out the gate anyways. This is the opportunity to let people earn your trust. So you have to watch out for number one. If it's happening too fast, then that's a red flag, absolutely. So all the love bombing, idolization, the mirroring, seems like it's, super compatible, soulmate, like we said, twin flame energy. Maybe it's like they have no unique hobbies and things of their own. After 3 or 4 months, you're still not meeting any people in their life. These are all kind of red flags that you need to pay attention to, that something else could be happening behind the scenes, right? And then it's all about watching the actions to ensure that they're aligning with the words, because typically we're going to see it out the gate anyways. Most survivors, we saw the red flags, we kind of ignored them, so on and so forth. But if you allow for a period of time for things to kind of grow, then you should be able to start connecting those dots without getting too hooked in. It's when people jump in the very beginning and just say, oh, it's so perfect, I trust this person, that is a clear sign that something could be wrong.
That's a good point. Really good point.
It's crazy because I think with any type of abusive relationship too, the pattern is consistent, and I think it's not always, it could be even with physical abuse, mental abuse. It usually is that slow drip, and then there's like incidents that occur and you're like, that was an accident, or they didn't mean it, or whatever the case may be. And it's really not until you like hit that breaking point and completely get out of it, which could take years, that you don't even realize how bad it really was. And once you're on the outside of it and you start to look in, I can only speak for my personal experiences in shitty relationships, and my relationship that I was in was not, I don't know that it was necessarily a narcissistic relationship, maybe a little bit, but for me, I didn't realize how bad it was until I was out of it. And like the whole time you're in, people around you who love you are like, this isn't right. This shouldn't be happening. Why are you putting up with this? And you're like, no, it's fine. And you make excuses for whatever. And then you leave.
Excuses for that behavior. Because of the slow grit, essentially what's happening is you have this one set image, right? And this is the image you're trying to protect, is that soulmate, that compatible, that best friend. Like, this works so perfectly. And then you start to see this other thing slowly emerging, and you're just start making excuses for it. You're trying to block it out yourself. Obviously at this point, the gaslighting where you're taking its toll, you already have the kind of a detachment from your own sense of truth and self. So you start relying more on them. And that's kind of how it plays out. Absolutely. And that's the scary thing about covert narcissism versus like overt, where it's just more like, you can tell that they're clearly a jerk and very verbally abusive, right? But covert narcissism really takes time to kind of unfold. So if moving in the very beginning, it seems like it's too good to be true, this is where you really need to kind of step back and pay attention to more of the behavior, the patterns, the individuality of that person. Do they have it or not? Because you can sense it. Most of us can sense it, and always trust your own intuition. I've talked to over 1,000 survivors. I've coached over 300 in the last year. And all of us, seeing the red flags, we chose to ignore it. And what I would say is that we have to empower people to pay attention to internal truth. If it's off, it's off. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, like trust your gut.
You have to trust your gut.
Absolutely. Wow, interesting. So you said you experienced a narcissist in a relationship that you had. Do you have children?
So I do have children, not with the particular, situation or experience that opened up my eyes to everything. But yeah, I don't talk too much about my kids' mom. I talk a little bit about kind of, strategies or whatever for co-parenting and getting through the legal system regarding, toxic and narcissistic. But yeah, I do have 2 kids right now, one's 20 and one's 18.
Wow.
I have a really intense story around that. I haven't shared it yet. My kids both watch, they know a lot of things. Kids are resilient. At the end of the day, we're not raising children, we're raising adults. And at some point they come to understand that they're of what's going on, right? So I've had these conversations, I just haven't made much content around it yet.
That makes sense. Okay, I get that.
They're watching the social media, so.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, really. Okay, so let's see. What would you give as the best advice to someone who is co-parenting with a narcissist? How do you usually guide your clients through something like that? I think that's probably where I'm going.
Wait, before you answer, can I just say that I've noticed in some of your content that you provided like key things that a narcissist does when they parent. And in looking at that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yep, check, 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 check. And so I don't know if I found it interesting that you can, just as you kind of pointed out narcissistic traits, generally you can point out narcissistic behavior when it comes to co-parenting with a narcissist. So I just found that interesting. So back to your question then.
What advice do you give people who are non-narcs who are co-parenting with a narcissist?
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of starts with this. You can only control what you can control, right? So I mean, particularly in the States, right, you have legal and you have physical custody, right? Legal custody is really going to come around like education, medical, and religion, right? And then you have the other side of that. What I usually say is, just fight for what you really truly believe in, get a schedule, stick to it. You do not have to have a relationship with the other parent in order to, raise healthy kids and have the other parent be involved. In this day and age, you have third-party apps where, you can mediate the schedule exchange and whatever important information around medical, education, and religion. Other than that, you do not have to talk to the other parent. But I also advise always is don't tell your side of the story. All you need to do is really step up and be the best you, get to the situation, stay, peaceful, dependable, and routine driven so that kid can see you survive and thrive. At the end of the day, if we go out and we bash the other parent, it's going to have a worse effect on the kid. Sure. They are going to know the difference. By the time they get 13, 14, they're already who they are. They already have an idea of what's, right and wrong and how things play out. But you can never make that child unlove the other parent. And it's like reverse psychology. The more you try to tell that story, the worse they're going to look at you. Yeah. So like for my kid's mom, and my kids know this part of it, she used to say some really awful things, and when they would tell me about this, I would just say, bless your mom, she's got a big heart. Now go brush your teeth, go do your chores, get out there and rake the leaves. That's all I would say. I just let it be. By the time they hit, 14 and 15, the conversations were pretty intense, and it was always brought from them. But I still to this day won't say anything negative. Now I've said some things, to friends and family.
Sure. Yeah, that's a different story.
Never to the kids. So, and just stick to it. You can't control what they're doing when the kids are over there. Don't play the game. Don't get sucked in. I mean, I wasted many hours being mad that they were getting fed, McDonald's 5 days a week. It's so against who I am, but I can't control it. I have to change my mindset and say, well, at least they're eating.
Yeah.
I guess that
you can drive yourself crazy trying to control it.
Yeah, I would say, a little bit about our background is when our parents divorced, and not that either of them are narcissistic. I wouldn't call them narcissists.
No.
But when they divorced, it was a very bad divorce. There was a lot of tit for tat. There was a lot of trash talking about each other to us.
All the time.
All the time, exactly. So I think at least I can say for me, because my daughter's father and I are no longer together, my main mentality was never ever to speak badly about him. It's not going to be beneficial to her. It's not going to be beneficial to him. It's not going to be beneficial to me. She's too small to understand. She'll be an adult one day and make her own decisions. You can only hope for the best relationship between both parents and their child. But at the same time, I think being a product of that behavior might make you hypersensitive to being ultra aware of how you talk about the other parent, how, your child sees that other parent. only want my daughter to ever see myself or her father in the best possible light. You know what I mean? Like to try and shield them from anything negative in any aspect of the world in general. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would say that I think
I believe it to be two sides of the coin. Like, I think, okay, so like, you know, the alcoholic dad has two sons, right? The two sons grow up, one's an alcoholic, one's not. When asked, they both say, because of my dad. Why did you become an alcoholic? Because of my dad. Why did you not become an alcoholic? Because of my dad. I think, you know, on some of this stuff, it really just comes down to emotional intelligence.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
It's funny too, because you don't realize,
You can say that to a kid. Like, you just shouldn't do that.
No,
Some
you
people
shouldn't.
just understand that.
yeah. And you don't realize, I think, as a kid, the impact that it's truly having and shaping who you are and who you become as an adult, which is a huge part of why we have this podcast, because it's therapeutic, I think, for us. And it's a way for us to consciously discuss things that happen to us as kids and how we want to do things differently with our own children today, because we grew up in a really toxic situation.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we live in a good time too, where it's like, it's awareness, right? Like, forgive them for they know not what they do. I don't blame my parents, you know, essentially they didn't have the information like we do, but I think it's on our generation and generations after us to start breaking the cycle.
100% agree.
I agree with that too. I also feel like this is, and we've discussed this before, like this is the first generation of children that have now grown into adults that have gone through this mass amount of divorce. That was not a common thing for our parents or our grandparents. It was like a rarity. If anything, it was a scarlet letter for a very long time. So like this is the first generation that's like speaking out about the experience, and it's heavy. It's really heavy. I really feel like it's had a severe impact on the millennial generation, I guess is the best way to put it, or even Gen X, and how they choose their partners, when they have children, how they're raising their children, how they live their lives. It's a big impact. I don't think anybody really realized how significant it would be.
It's the conditioning of it all, right? We've all been conditioned for generation after generation after generation that these kind of family systems are acceptable. That it takes two to tango. That you know, love isn't perfect, and that no couple out there is without issues. Like, we get all that, but like, the abuse has been hidden and justified for too long under, you know, family values and all these things that, well, they didn't have the education we have. They didn't have readily available the awareness and putting definitions and terms and patterns together to understand how it affects other generations, right? The mind is like a garden, and those seeds that are planted early on, like, we all succeeded after it, no problem. But that didn't come without fighting past lots of challenges that were passed down to us. We didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to really take the information and change it.
Yeah, and it's funny too, even today, like, there's cultural excuses that get made, like, oh, he's old school Italian, that's why they are that way. And I'm like, I'm not using that as an excuse anymore, because our heritage is what it is at this point. Like, no, the behavior is not okay.
I also think like part of it would be, especially when it comes to divorce, which can get really nasty, is that it's just second nature at this point in people's lives. They're like, well, if the relationship doesn't work out, fuck it, just get divorced, no big deal, you know?
Yeah, that's a whole nother set of issues, right? And that's why narcissism is on the rise, right? Because you have kind of the internet and social media. It's a tool at the end of the day, but it also has been used to kind of push out this, you know, need for validation, instant attention.
Yeah.
If the group is ingrained, just hop the fence and take the neighbors, right? Like, it's there's so much in your face all the time to say that there's a bazillion options, so people are just, they're scatterbrained over it. 100%. That's only going to get worse, but it's feeding narcissism, right? At the end of the day, narcissism really isn't, it's worse than what we believe. And the key to this is because the data's jump. The data says it's only between 1% and 5% of the population. But the core problem with narcissists is they don't believe they're the problem. So you don't have people going in to see if they're narcissists. They don't care. They're not the problem.
Of course.
Junk data in is junk data out.
This is the biggest problem, I think, with the family court systems too, when you're having to separate from someone or come up with like an agreement for raising children with someone who is an undiagnosed narcissist. It's like, how do you manage that? And I think society has become much better with bringing awareness to mental health in general, but we're not that far along yet with narcissism. But it's one of those things that I think at some point is going to need to be acknowledged, because their approach in these situations is so different from someone who's not an narc, that it's like, how do you protect the kids and the people that are dealing with the abuse from this person, especially if they're not diagnosed? It's insane.
Well, so that's the whole thing with narcissism and narcissistic behavior, right? All cluster Bs, it's manipulation, and they manipulate the courts just as much when they get away with it, right? Especially if you have tons of money or any kind of influence, or in female covert narcissists who really want to punish their victims are very good at it, because the judicial system leans that way a little bit as well. But then again, if you have, a man who has high stature and a lot of money and can make a lot of things happen, they can manipulate the system as well too, right? So with that being said, I mean, it all comes down to awareness. We have to continue to bring awareness. And I think that the judicial system, from, the boots on the ground, the cops, it needs to start there. The first responders need to be aware of what this looks like, how it plays out, and how to watch those dynamics so that they can be more educated from the start.
Yeah.
If you can catch from the start, then, it'll affect how it trickles down to the judge. But from the boots on the ground to the supreme judges of however that works out, they all need to be educated on what it is, what course of control is. And the United States is very, very behind on this compared to Canada, Australia, and parts of the UK. And I don't know too much about it. I just know that those countries are a little more advanced than we are. We have zero education at that level, right? And then if you want to get it into the school systems, there should be kind of, relationship courses that teach this, so that kids can start to understand it before they go out and think that this is normal behavior.
Is it, now, in your opinion, is narcissism a learned behavior, or is it like a hereditary thing, like a biological chemical, or?
No, it's a learned behavior. It just starts extremely early, right? There's three things with it. It's environment, or what do they say? It's nurture, nature, and fate. Nurture, who's taking care of you? Nature, what's your environment, and where sociology, location, and all of these things. And then fate just being the combination of the two. So, I mean, it essentially comes down to, at the end of the day, right? Like, everybody suffers from childhood trauma at the end of the day. And empaths, people who develop empathy and things of that nature, we tend to go inwards. Something's wrong with me. What's my problem? I need to fix this. And we tend to approach life that way. Where narcissists and cluster Bs tend to go external. What's wrong with the world? Why are they treating me this way? How dare you? And they run a different monologue. And at the end of the day, because of this kind of, a delusional world that they've created from a very young age, they develop a pathological mindset around it. And that's that.
Very interesting.
This is actually fascinating to me, because this is a lot of what we're coaching through in my organization with the new operating model. Is everything is about you and what you control of yourself, and you can only understand what people will show you on the surface, but there's so much deeper, right? This whole iceberg concept that I'm sure we're all aware of, and they are teaching these things in a corporate environment now, which is, I think, fantastic. I actually just signed up to be a mental health advocate, and they're going to train me to help be a resource within the organization for these things, because I have so much passion around all of this because of situations that people I love have been in, and it's like, whatever you can do as an individual to try to create awareness and be a better human and to raise better humans so that you can recognize these flags, it's so important. So important. That's why I appreciate your content on social so much, because you really are bringing so much awareness to a situation that I think some people don't even realize they're a part of.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that, and I would totally agree. I think that everybody needs to take mental health very, very seriously, right? Like, it's a different world out here. It's kind of an attention economy. Everybody's fighting for your attention, and this is how it happens, right? Like, the attention where attention goes, energy flows. You got to be very careful of the kind of things that we're consuming inside the mind. Again, if the mind is like a garden, what we consume plants the seeds that will grow. Now, is it going to grow in a way that really fulfills your life and pushes you forward, or is it going to continue to hold you back? So I think that people need to wake up and really pay attention to who is influencing them. What are they buying into? Who are they watching? What are they consuming? Are they consuming or creating? Because in this life, we're here for 3 reasons. We're here to love, experience, and create. And we create with our imagination. And this is why everybody's out for your attention, is to take you away from your imagination and your ability to create your own reality.
That's true. I think you make a really good point about, mental health in today's day. And it's come a long way. We're almost to the point where people are even maybe overly sensitive or overly cautious about disturbing anyone's mental health about anything, with safe spaces and things like that. I think, or I should say more of like not everybody, people are much more sensitive about hurting other people's feelings and making them feel bad about themselves and things like that, which that's part of life. Like, not everybody's going to be your friend. Not everybody's going to be happy all the time. This is life. At the same time, with all of the mental health progress that I feel like our country has made over the last few years, I'm surprised that it's not up to par with the justice system, especially for family court. I would think like if you have a parent who's bipolar, that would be considered by a judge. It's a medical diagnosis. Why wouldn't we consider whether or not a parent is narcissistic or has NPD?
Because they're not getting diagnosed because they're narcissists.
It's because they don't see it as a problem. They see it as extremely rare, right? Because again, the data's junk.
Yeah.
They don't have any real data.
Interesting.
But I think we're at the beginning of the awareness, that's going to help expose it so that we can start looking at it from a different angle. Because if you solely rely on them coming in to seek help, we're never going to get the real data. And that's just the bottom line.
Well,
one thing I want to ask you, though, I'm very interested in, I would have to see the data around, like, have we really made that much progress in the United States of America in the last 2 years as it pertains to mental health? Because kind of after COVID and everything and all of this shift to remote work and further isolation has caused, we don't even really know the extent of the mental health issues on top of the political, stage right now, on top of the economy, on top of these other things. Have we really made that much progress in mental health as an overarching?
Maybe it's not so much
I think it's
progress,
more
awareness and attention to mental health.
Right.
I don't think that was stuff that like anxiety disorders. I feel like everybody has an anxiety disorder nowadays, right? And it's true. I mean, we all do. Don't get me wrong. But different things like that, I think it's more maybe not progress, but awareness.
Yeah, I think people need to understand exactly, because like I don't really like the labels. In fact, I tell everybody I'm a coach, not a therapist. I don't label anybody, and I sure can't diagnose anybody, none of that nature. I'll only do that for one person, and that's who opened up my eyes. And I'm willing to have my Johnny Depp moment for that if need be. So that is past. But on the other side of that, like, I don't even know where I was going with that, but there has to be more awareness to the actual problem on the boots on the ground, at the school systems, in the court systems, from the cops to the attorneys to the judges, in order for us to start making any change. At this point, mental health needs to be taken seriously by the individuals as well. Not a lot of people speak up, especially men, as it pertains to narcissistic abuse, because narcissistic abuse is like really around, a lot of it is mainly the mental, the emotional, psychological. It could get into like the sexual side and the physical side, but typically like true narcissism is right around deception, deceit, control. And people don't speak out enough. We need more survivors to speak out and start changing that narrative, especially for men, because I think men don't have enough resources themselves. And that kind of needs to be looked at as a mental health awareness as we continue to bring more awareness. It's like, let's look at this from a bigger angle.
What are some of the ways maybe that people can start to help to create some change? Like, what would you recommend? I mean, you're doing great things, obviously, with your content, but like, for people like us who recognize that and see that, how can we help?
No, I think most like victims and everything is really about continuing to share their stories, share your stories, have those conversations, find groups of survivors that are all together helping each other to thrive and to validate each other on this experience, because it is so hidden and it is a very lonely journey, especially if you're alone, because people who have never experienced this kind of deceit, this kind of abuse that's so hidden, they just don't understand it. They won't get it until you actually, it's say, you don't know until you know. And this is so true with especially narcissistic abuse. So get your story out, tell your story, share your story, find groups where you can go share your story and help other people be seen, heard, and validated. That's the most important thing, is we need to continue to share. The survivors need to continue to help others be seen, heard, and validated, because there's more out there. There's so many people that aren't speaking out. Maybe they're not even liking the content, but they're watching it in order because they're embarrassed. They don't fully understand it. A lot of times I'll talk to people and they won't even fully understand, like, oh, this really is emotional abuse, that they went on this pattern that was, pathologically done in a high percentage of the time intentionally against them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where it's intentional, not just the toxic narcissistic behavior, but I'm talking full-blown narcissism, and it's deeper than we know.
Yeah, and I think the process to probably get out of something like that, to even get to a place yourself as a victim, to be able to start that path of recovery, is so hard and terrifying that it could take years to get to a place that you can even start working on, like, telling that story, right?
It's mainly because they think they're the problem, or conditions at victims to believe we're the problem. And this is the whole thing. So the narcissist really hooks you in by mirroring you, like mirroring all of your best traits, your mannerisms, your body language, and everything that you're about. They kind of consume this data, they then shine it back on you where you really get hooked in. And then slowly they start to chip away at you, starting to disrespect, diminish, devalue, minimize, deflect everything that they loved about you, which starts to strip you away. You know what I'm saying? And so you, through that cycle of high and low, up and down, push, pull, it's really called intermittent reinforcement. We become addicted to the narcissist validation, right? Over time, with oxytocin and dopamine on the high, cortisol on the low, it's the same as any kind of addiction. We get addicted to being brought back up. And the narcissist breadcrumbs you. They give you intermittent reinforcement, which picks you back up. And then you become addicted to their validation because they stripped you of your sense of self-worth, your self-belief, your self-identity. And that's how that cycle continues. And to break it is extremely, because the victim put so much into it. We're waiting for that reward. We're waiting for that reward. When are they going to change? When will I get that person consistently? And this is the pathological loop they continue to run, and they will never stop doing it, whether it's with this supply, the next supply, or the end supply. The only way it works with the narcissist is that you will get your life sucked out of you. You will lose all of your emotional energy, which is what I believe to be your soul.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, do you think, do you believe that a narc can heal?
I believe, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. I am a Christian. I don't attend church too much, but I am a Christian. I should probably do better with that. But so, yeah, I mean, anybody can change. But the prognosis for narcissists are the lowest out of any cluster B. Okay. And that's from Dr. Jill himself. That's something. And honestly, they don't think they're the problem. So do I personally, outside of God? No, I don't think they can change. I think that you have good people and you have bad people.
I agree with
I have
that exact
so
statement.
many thoughts in my head,
I agree with everything you just said.
and I think yes, that is 100% accurate.
You pray that that God turns us Saul into Paul. That's
Yep.
all you can do, in
Yep.
my opinion.
Yep.
The devil came to lie, cheat, steal, and destroy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. This is a good topic.
Very
really
powerful.
good topic.
So, is there anything that you want to tell us about? You can certainly promote that.
I'm getting ready to launch the largest narcissistic abuse recovery coaching app on the planet. It is our own social media experience that's all private, secure with, I have a community manager, I have recovery mentors, and I do weekly Zoom calls that's all related to like holistic healing, mindset mastery, and the law of manifestation, the law of attraction, whatever anybody wants to call it, doesn't matter to me. Which, it's all the same, whether you believe in science, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in philosophy or whatever. God says, knock on the door will be answered, seek and thou shalt find. Energy says, or science says we're all energy. Well, I think God created us as energy, and energy creates energy. So there's no doubt that there's a lot of scientific facts that the law of manifestation works. So I coach people not only with how to heal, the trauma, but also, how to transform their lives and become the best, most authentic them. What do they want? How can you become the most fulfilled you? Because it's not over. The only way the narcissist wins is if you do nothing. If you sit down and do nothing, then they win.
Yep.
But you can use this opportunity to really transform your life. We have to find the lesson, and then we need to move forward. Don't sit down and do nothing.
Yeah, I would imagine too that anybody who does go through that experience and gets through it and comes out the other end, that it's got to be just so freeing. Just refinding yourself, so to speak. It's got to be very just freeing. I think that would be the best word.
Absolutely. And I would say, this is when the veil is lifted, when, the rose-colored glasses come off, when the mask lifts and you're finally awake, once you see it, you will never unsee it. You now have been gifted with the gift of discernment. You now see life for what it really is, okay? So at some point, you're going to be healed. You're going to feel better. You'll get back out in the world. You'll start participating. But what will the quality of life be like if you don't do the work internally to really discover yourself, okay? That's the most important thing, is use this energy as fuel to transform your life into your most authentic, most fulfilling life. And then once you feel better, change the mindset once again to say, well, I'm healed, but I'm still in self-discovery, because you need to continue to do the work. Once you have become a victim of this type of abuse, especially if you have repeated patterns of this type of relationships, to stay on a self-discovery, to ensure that you're constantly being your best self, so that you don't repeat the same experience with a different face. You can't give up. You can't stop doing the work.
Yeah.
I would think that people would be almost not paranoid, but so high alert to not go through that experience again. I mean, because it sounds just terrible.
I think that's the problem, though, and I think that's exactly what Randy's saying, is that because that once you have that awakening, now you have to almost do the work to be normal again with people and to trust and to do the things you should do, because you're basically so screwed up from the past that it impacts now how you move forward.
I read somewhere
And
that
to be able to trust yourself, right? You have to be able to trust yourself again, because again, I'll say 99% of survivors, we saw the red flags. When you get to a healing point where you finally can admit our part in it, why did we stay so long? Now that's a deeper problem that's related to the internal piece of us.
Yep.
Now that, and if you have a habit of these kind of relationships, there's something deeper that still needs to be healed. And until you learn the lesson and continue to develop self-trust, self-love, everything internal to be whole, you can't go be whole.
Yeah.
It's so crazy that if you're not constantly keeping your eyes on the prize, it's so easy to get back into old patterns, old ways of thinking, complacency. I don't need to meditate today. I don't need to journal today. It's okay. And that's how it starts to happen again. And then you lose autonomy and all of these things.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, it's tell us where we can find you on social media and
Yeah, anything else you want our audience to know about you and what you've got
really
coming up?
appreciate you guys let me come on here. I love what you guys are doing. I'm a big fan. I keep up the great work. A lot of fun. You can find me on all social media platforms as just Coach Randy White.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for all the good things that you are doing out there. And we want to continue to support you. So we'll continue to share your content. And as soon as this app is available, shoot us a DM. Let us know, because we
love
want
to
to
promote it.
do whatever we can do to help. And
Keep doing good. You're doing awesome.
yes,
This
God's
is
work.
amazing.
You're a good man.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks for coming. Bye, guys. We'll see you next week.